Hi there, everyone. This is Dan Dix here reporting for Press for Truth. Today is Monday, February 23rd, 2015, and we're currently out front the Vancouver courthouse, where the Coalition Against Repeal is getting set to take on the federal government to fight for the medical marijuana patients' rights to grow their own medicine. So today we're going to speak to some of the members of the coalition to find out the current status of this case. If you want to just tell us, first of all, a little bit about what is going on here today.
Well, we're here to show support for an important court case that's happening inside this building, which is to determine whether or not medicinal cannabis patients will continue to have the right to grow their own cannabis, or whether they'll be forced to destroy their home garden and only buy their medicine from these government companies.
How important do you think it is for these patients to be able to maintain their right to grow?
I think it's extremely important for a number of reasons. Part of it's a question of affordability. The government-regulated companies, which we're not against, we're happy to have them there as well as an option. But they're charging far more than even street prices for their cannabis, and for patients that need a lot of cannabis, they simply can't afford that access.
If I had to buy from a licensed producer, it would cost me $36,000 a year for my medicine, and I'm on Canada pension, and you know that you aren't going to even get anywhere near $36,000 a year, let alone $20,000 a year on Canada pension. So it's about 3 years worth of wage for me to buy 1 year's worth of medicine from the government.
Is it a case of Marijuana Inc. kind of swooping in and trying to shut out the mom and pop shops?
That's what we're seeing with the MMPR, basically, right? And that's what we don't want to see right now, is the MMPR overcharging patients and undersupplying them. And right now we're able to supply ourselves and a few others. If Paul and I were able to supply ourselves and you and Molly and a couple other people, we can do that without a problem and do it with quality. Whereas the MMPR want to charge other people 100, 1,000 times more than they should, and that's not right.
Can you break it down a little bit for people who may not be familiar with this case, of what exactly is going on today in the next 3 weeks?
Well, in the next 3 weeks, first off, the government, we should roll it back just to the restraining order, because the government is under a federal injunction, which is essentially a restraining order stopping them from removing gardens. So in essence, the next 3 weeks will determine if patients are going to be allowed to continue to grow in this country for personal use in their homes. And if that is declared, then of course we could be going to appeals right up to the Supreme Court of Canada. So it could be another 3 years, and that's where we go back to that whole injunction and that restraining order, that it could be another 3 years. So, you know, the what ifs, I don't know. All I know is I highly believe we're going to win, based on the fact we have 4 federal judges who have already said this case does not support public safety and will make irreparable harm befall patients. And that's fundamentally what this is about: justice and liberty, and the Section 7 right to liberty, constitutional right.
We're here because we're in the federal court after winning our first case. We're here because the government appealed the right of growers, or people who have medical marijuana needs, to grow their own medicine. And we want those 30,000, 40,000 Canadians to be able to continue to grow their own medicine, and we want other Canadians to be able to do so as well. But the government would like to take that away from us and put that in the hands of licensed monopolies, who will do a good job, but they will charge a lot more, and they will have a lot less variety than the people who've been growing their medicine for themselves. Well, there's some great information coming out. First of all, that shows that medical marijuana is very safe to grow. We're not a hazard to the community. We're not a hazard to the dwellings we live in. Our children aren't at risk if they are with plants in a house. You're going to find every myth put forward by the federal government to be smashed.
This morning we began with opening statements from both the plaintiffs, the patient witnesses, as well as the opening statement from the Crown. And we've had one witness, one of the plaintiffs, go on, Mr. Davey, who testified to his history, medical history, serious motorcycle accident, brain damage, a lot of pharmaceutical drugs that were destroying his quality of life, the discovery that medical marijuana could regain some of that quality of life. And his desire to be able to afford enough to use for his chronic pain and other issues, as well as his desire to have a trust level with the medicine, to understand that everything that's gone into the production process from seed to harvest. And so I think the evidence went in quite well. I look forward to hearing more from our witnesses and trying to really figure out what is the Crown's position on why the Section 7 rights of medical cannabis patients in Canada should be trod upon in the service of what appears to be the service of a system designed to take money from the patient's pockets and put it in the hands of commercial entities.
Is it a right that Canadians should have, do you think, to...
Definite right that Canadians should have. The federal government is doing nothing for sick patients like myself. I have post-traumatic stress. They're only just recognizing now that cannabis works in some situations, when God knows that cannabis has been used for thousands and thousands of years.
Isn't there examples even in the United States with some of the states legalizing that show that this is beneficial?
Canada was on the forefront of science advancement and very close to legalization. And unfortunately, we've lagged behind. The Harper government has basically destroyed Canada and the rights of medical patients, and we've been left out in the cold.
What would this mean in 3 weeks from now if you win? And could this set a precedent across the nation?
Oh, this is definitely a precedent-setting case. This is at the federal court, and ultimately this will go to the Supreme Court of Canada. But yeah, it already has set a precedent in that Health Canada and the federal government tried to stop patients from growing their own, told them to actually destroy what they had grown by mixing it with kitty litter and throwing away their medicine so they could then buy more from these companies. It was totally absurd. But we were able to get an injunction in court to stop that. So right now we've got both systems running parallel, which I think is great. Patients can grow their own cannabis if they choose to, or if they prefer, they can buy it from one of these companies. And I think that's how it should stay, and that's what we're fighting for. We're not trying to shut down the government-regulated sale. We're just trying to preserve the right for patients to have the option to grow their own as well.
It sounds like you're in favor of a truly free market where, you know, LPs, DGs, growers, why not let everybody have a slice of the pie? Is that correct?
Yeah, I'd like to see the market opened up. I mean, ultimately, my vision for fully legal cannabis is like the wine model, where you can brew some at home for yourself and your friends. You can buy it in a store. It's an open system where there's big companies and there's smaller producers as well. It really runs the range. That's the kind of model we'd like to see for cannabis. But this case is specifically about medical users being able to grow it for themselves, and I think that especially is very important. You know, I believe in legalization for everybody, but the medical users should be at the front of the line.
If we win this, in my own opinion, Allard and R versus Smith next month in the Supreme Court of Canada will forge any sort of legalization policy that any constitution or any political party wants to govern or try to institute, simply because they all have to listen to the Constitution. So if medical patients can constitutionally have the right to grow cannabis in this country, they can't turn around and legalize and say, but you can't. They did that in Washington, but they don't have Section 15 of the Charter of Rights and Freedoms like we do in Canada, nor are they at the federal level of their country.
Is it safe to say marijuana will be legalized in Canada? It's just a matter of how much control there's going to be over it?
Absolutely. I mean, they wouldn't have these big mining companies and these big people moving in with billions of dollars being invested if there wasn't a long-term goal. These aren't short-term investments. These are long-term investments. And of course, they're looking at Colorado, $80 million in taxes. We need that for Canada. We need a Colorado-style model. But only 10,000 people are accessing the MMPR, the Marijuana for Medical Purposes regulations. That's a flawed and failed policy and program that needs to go. It needs to either be amended for the people and made proper, or it needs to go.
I think first and foremost is we live in a free and democratic society that's governed by the rule of law. And the starting point for freedom has to be autonomy. It has to be the right to do things. It ought to be upon the government, if they want to take away your rights under threat of criminal sanction, to demonstrate why that's legitimate in a free and democratic society. I mean, that's number one. We're free people. Number two, there's an affordability issue when you're forced to buy medicine that you can produce for yourself at a fraction of the cost. Number three, you know, there's an issue of visiting the harms of the criminal justice system on people who are not really the targets of your legislation. I mean, the government talks about diverting to the black market. They talk about unsafe grows without any real evidence of that. They talk about a whole lot of things that actually don't apply to the majority of medical marijuana consumers. And so the question becomes, you have a criminal law in place, but it's capturing conduct that's far beyond what the law is designed to target. And in charter terms, we call that overbroad. And when you impose such dramatic consequences on people for criminality, prospect of jail, prospect of forfeiture, the interposition of the criminal justice system in denying you choices about your medicine, we say that those consequences are grossly disproportionate to any benefits that the law might achieve. And it's really questionable in my mind whether the law achieves any benefits at all. I mean, if anybody that understands prohibition in this country understands that the criminal justice system is not stopping anybody that wants to get marijuana from getting it. It's not preventing anybody that sells marijuana or produces marijuana from selling it or producing it. It doesn't really achieve any of the social goals that the government says it's designed to achieve. And so just on a factual basis, we're not getting any benefit out of it, and yet at the same time we're going to criminalize a bunch of sick people and trot upon their Section 7 rights. So, yeah, the limited issue, or one of the limited issues, is affordability, but really it boils down to freedom and what's legitimate for government to do in a free society.
Yeah, we're getting there. Hey, listen, they legalized alcohol in British Columbia in 1933, and it took about 70, 80 years before they got that right afterwards. I mean, it was a long process of painful legalization. First, you had to, you could only buy it 3 hours a day, a couple of days a week. You had to sign papers. You needed a certificate from your doctor authorizing you to possess alcohol, believe it or not, for the first 15, 20 years. Only did they abandon that in the 1950s. So, legalization just doesn't happen overnight. This is a big step, though, in making it happen right here at this courthouse.
Well, if you had an opportunity to say something directly to that judge, maybe summed up in a sentence or two, what might you say to him?
I'd say that despite any laws written down, human beings have a natural right to be free from anybody bullying them into either doing things that they don't want to do or not doing what they want to do unless they hurt somebody else. And the only reason in this free country that we're paying this judge's salary is to make sure that that happens, that people are not bullied and nobody gets to tell somebody that they can't do what they want if they're not hurting somebody else.
Do the right thing, This isn't Nazi Germany, and don't make it Nazi Germany. My grandfathers fought on the front lines against oppression, and this is just the same kind of stuff, I mean, then it was trying to drag people away for their religious beliefs. Now it's just the freedom of an herb, there's no difference, but they want to drag people away again for something that's so simple as just an herb. People have to really see the similarities here,
Well, I would say that listen to the patients that are going to be presenting their stories and explaining why it's important for them to maintain this right to grow their own cannabis, and let's preserve the lower court decisions and to keep going in the right direction. Health Canada has lost every single medical marijuana case that they've had. They fought them all to the Supreme Court of Canada using taxpayer dollars, and they've always lost everything. I'd like to see Health Canada and the government make a real valid effort to make sure medical cannabis is available and not these kind of token half-hearted efforts they've been doing.
When you prohibit something like that, like the LPs are going to sell this stuff for more than what a lot of people can afford, that means there's going to be a viable black market. The black market's going to fight over its turf with violence like it always does. That's going to put all of our communities at risk. That's going to put our police officers at risk. That's going to put our young people at risk as they continue to sell this product for an underground market simply because a government is trying to prohibit something. Just like alcohol prohibition spawned all of the gangsters and all of those underground markets with all of its danger, when it ended, so did all of that. This violence and this stuff that's going on now is all here because our government is insisting on continuing the prohibition, just like alcohol prohibition, but in this case even worse, because there are no societal harms to cannabis use or abuse. Alcohol abuse, on the other hand, costs us immense amount of dollars in our society. If we legalized cannabis and made it available, there would be an increase in cannabis use for those people who really do just believe that they shouldn't break laws, and there'd be a decrease in alcohol use as people understand that there's a way better way to enjoy your Friday and Saturday night and still have a nice Sunday morning.